there's only three ways basically to grow a business. You can either get more people to buy, get people to buy more, or buy more often. So you have to do one, if not all of those. And the good news is that, in fact, if growth is your challenge, your question at the moment, innovation is the answer. And innovation is the answer when done right. But as you know, a lot of businesses have problems with innovation, and there needs to be a reason for people to buy more, or to buy more frequently. And the reason is that otherwise they'll just carry on doing the same. We're creatures of habit, and therefore we need to give people a reason to change brands, to trade up, and we can do that by better answering their needs and proposing new and better solutions to the challenges they have in their lives. But as I say, the problem is that companies find successful innovation very hard. So that is why I wanted to talk about it today. For those of you that don't know me, a little background first of all. My background has been in multinationals, very large multinationals, as you can see, such as P&G as part of the Gillette Group, Philip Morris International, and Nestle most recently. And since I started my consulting business back in 2011, I've been continuing with these major organizations such as Coca-Cola, Unilever, Hero, Carlsberg, etc., but also some small and medium-sized companies, because all companies need to innovate. I've also had the chance of getting academic recognition, and I regularly get invited as a guest lecturer at universities all over the world. I've put Miami there just to remind me to talk about that part of my business, but I go there 3 or 4 times a year. In addition, I've been invited in Delhi, in Lima, in Shanghai, in Beijing. I've been invited to speak guest lecturer at MBAs and business schools around the world. And I enjoy doing that because I find young people, and most of them are young, they ask good questions. They ask the questions that at first glance may be stupid, but quite often when we're in business, we don't ask enough questions of the way things are done. And that's why I really enjoy working with younger people. And when I was working in the corporate world, I was always hiring a few people straight from university because I loved their fresh minds. So I've learned a lot about innovation and marketing in general, working with so many prestigious companies. But I have to admit, I did become frustrated because if you work in them, you will know they tend to be slow to react, and sometimes their processes can be very, very long. So today I want to work with companies, and I prefer to choose clients that are agile and that want results fast. Now, I admit I'm impatient. I thrive on change and fast-paced environments. So if you want ideas and actions in record time, then listen on, because I have ideas for you. Before we dig into today's topic of innovation, I have a couple of favors for you. Firstly, because I've spent so long working in the corporate world, I have a tendency to slip back into my old habit. And if I do, could someone just put a message in the chat? Hey, Denise, get back to real life, because I want to talk face to face with you, and we will have time to talk face to face in just a moment and get to know each other and the challenges and ideas that you are looking for. The other request that I do have for you is, if you know anybody that is having problems in innovation and is not joining today, I had over 100 people sign up, and then I had during the reminders sending out yesterday and today, quite a few people said we can't come. Will there be a recording? And I don't normally give a recording, but this time I've decided that I will. So when you get it tomorrow, if you could share it with your colleagues, that would be wonderful so that they too can benefit from this talk. And if you stay to the end, I have, as always, a gift, but this time it's a very useful gift for you. You may have seen that a couple of weeks ago I published the second edition of one of my books in the Winning Secrets series called Winning Secrets to Successful Innovation. And that's in fact why this masterclass came about, because so many asked me to run a course based on the book. You might have seen the announcement. You might even have had the chance to get a copy. If you didn't, then if you stay to the end, I will tell you how you can get a copy for free as a thanks for staying to the end. And if you have already bought it, you can use the code that I'm going to give you to get a copy of the book for a 50% discount on my other book, Winning Customer Centricity. So stay to the end and you will get those codes to get a free copy of Winning Secrets to Successful Innovation or 50% off Winning Customer Centricity. So with that said, let's get into innovation. And as you know, the innovation fail rate, I have seen everything from 80, 90 to 95%. In other words, the majority of new product launches and services fail. And yet it's important for business, and CEOs recognize this. According to PricewaterhouseCoopers, their global innovation survey showed that 80% of CEOs believe that innovation is a key driver for business growth. So management do understand how vital it is to their business to innovate and innovate successfully. And this sentiment is supported also by hard facts, because according to McKinsey, companies that prioritize innovation are 50% more likely to outperform their peers within 10 years. So 50% is a huge number to get higher growth, faster growth than 50% of your competitors. I'm sure you would all love to have that. Now, as we know, the probability of selling to an existing customer is up to 14, or I've even seen 21 or plus times higher than the probability of selling to a new customer. So obviously, innovation is a way of keeping customers satisfied for longer. And that's another reason why it's so important. So I wanted to understand why there are so many companies that are failing their innovation. And I found 10 mistakes that companies make, and even large companies make, when innovating. The first three have to do with the process they use. The new offers are based only on internal technical know-how or skills. They make minor changes to a product or service and then expect the customer to pay more. But if the customer doesn't see an improvement, they aren't going to pay more, are they? And then the third is that the innovative products and services are like those that are already being sold. So they're more what I would call renovations than true innovations. So those are the first three mistakes that companies can make when they're innovating. The next group of four topics around the people, because people are involved in innovation, of course. Some companies organize an innovation team, and sometimes they even house them somewhere outside the company so they can be freer and more creative, supposedly. They never share ideas with those outside of the innovation team, so everybody else in the company feels a little bit excluded, and they have no way of sharing good ideas. And they then don't let people outside the core business to look or suggest innovation. And they only move forward with innovation when everybody's in agreement. So there are a lot of people issues associated with innovations and might explain why innovations can be unsuccessful. And the third large group have to do with the actual planning process itself. Either new products are never tested on social media or with customers themselves. It's a very well tested and long time used process that nobody wants to change for developing concepts, and we'll talk about that as well in a moment. And innovation takes time, but companies are only thinking a little bit ahead for the next 6 to 12 months in most cases. But innovation takes time. They need to be thinking years, and usually I suggest 5 to 10 years down the road. Now, I know it's impossible to know what's going to happen even 2 years from now. The world is changing so fast, but it's important that we prepare for possible changes to our organization. And I'll also talk about that. So those are the three areas that I'm going to be talking about: the process we use, the people involved, and the plans we use to innovate products. And if we can solve those 10 most frequent mistakes that companies make, we can avoid these sorts of mistakes. I've just taken 3 examples that I know very well. The first one is in carbonated soft drinks. And Pepsi for a time was struggling to compete with Coke and thought, well, they'll come out with a completely different product called Crystal Pepsi. And they made that very first mistake of trying to charge more, when in fact, if you look at it, the product has less. There's no color, there's less taste, etc. So obviously a big failure. Colgate, luckily this never went, as far as I know, beyond market testing. They thought that rather than producing products to help people keep their teeth clean after eating, they will also get into the food category. And they started launching some of these entries, but as I said, it was only a market test and quickly removed because there was nothing to do with mint and fresh flavors in the food that they were proposing. And the third example, another example of a technical issue, these are Zippo lighters, and they thought, how do we get more women involved? Because in those days, they were selling lighters mainly to men. And they thought, well, we could use the outer casing, but put perfume inside it. And women can carry around the lighters, but it will actually contain perfume. Again, the associations between Zippo lighters, women, smoking, smoke, smell, just didn't work. So those are 3 examples that could have been avoided if people had paid attention to the process they used, the people they used, and the plans they used. So the advantage of trying to think about these issues obviously means you don't waste resources with products that aren't going to be successful. And as I said, up to 95% of products today fail. So let's start by looking into the process of innovation itself. And I bet you all have one, and it probably looks something like this. You start with ideation, you go into concept development, you produce the product or design the service, you launch, and then almost always there's going to be post-launch measurement and sometimes some adaptation. And then, of course, because it's been adapted, you're going to relaunch it, and then you go on and repeat the same process for the next new product. There are a lot of things wrong with this. First of all, the ideation tends to be internal. It tends to start with internal processes, internal departments such as R&D or marketing. Now, I'm not saying they don't have good ideas, but unless you're involving your customers, your consumers in the ideation process and being inspired by the benefits that they're looking for, it's unlikely that you're going to succeed. In addition, what tends to happen, as you can see, this funnel starts very wide and gets narrower and narrower. And the problem there is that you start with a lot of ideas and you come down until you launch one. Maybe all those ideas were brilliant and you're going to get rid of all but one of those ideas. Or on the other hand, maybe all the ideas were terrible ideas and you'll still launch one of them. So in both cases, it's a big waste of time and energy. So I've got a better solution for you. And instead of a funnel, it's a virtuous circle that starts with customer and insight. And by the way, I use the word customer. If you work in consumer goods, you're probably used to using the word consumer. If you're in leisure activities or the leisure business, perhaps you talk about clients or farmer. So if I use the word customer, just replace it by consumer or client when I'm talking. So as you notice, this still has the same 3 stages of exploration, execution, and assessment. However, as I said, it starts with the customer insight. And by doing that, we identify an opportunity. We then go into ideation about how to meet this opportunity, this need or desire of the customer. We create concepts, we plan, we develop, we launch, and then we evaluate. But then we also do portfolio optimization. As you know, there is only a limited space for products and services, and quite often what companies do, they just keep adding and adding to their portfolio, when in fact what they should be doing is using Pareto's rule of 80-20. In other words, each year look seriously at the bottom 20% and decide which products they could eliminate that are not doing as well, and to really have a serious discussion about whether they need to keep these low-selling products and services in the portfolio or not. So you start with customer and insight, the opportunity, you go through the exploration, execution, and assessment, and you finish with portfolio optimization, which together with the customer and insight input normally throws up some new opportunities for you. Now, to show you how that works, I want to talk about a client that I had who is one of the leading brands in the cola business, and they wanted to move beyond the cola business, and they came up with the idea because there was so much criticism about sugar and colas, etc., that they thought they would make a new carbonated soft drink, but sweetened with fresh fruit juice. Now, we could have looked at what were the other carbonated soft drinks on the market that claimed to have fresh fruit juice in them, but I proposed to them to use a tool that I'm going to share with you now that is amazingly powerful in innovation. It's called the Zoom In and Zoom Out tool, and it goes like this. When, in this case, the client was looking for a new carbonated soft drink, we could have jumped straight to fruit-flavored carbonated soft drinks. But I said to them, no, let's start with all beverages. And we tried to understand the category of beverages. Then we went to all cold beverages, and then all non-alcoholic beverages. And as you can see, we're gradually focusing in on the segment that we have planned to launch in, which is called the fruit-flavored carbonated soft drink. By doing this, we interviewed and discussed with consumers of all these different categories: beverages, cold beverages, non-alcoholic beverages, carbonated soft drinks, and fruit-flavored carbonated soft drinks. And what we found, to our surprise, I have to admit, was that consumers saw this new drink as a healthier energy drink. The reason was, they said, well, it's naturally sweet because it has fruit in it, and it has the added benefit of vitamins and minerals coming from those fruits. So it will give us the energy we need, but in a healthier way. As you can imagine, that was an amazing positioning that we would never have thought about if we hadn't used this zoom in approach and started by understanding each category and subcategory before getting to carbonated fruit flavored carbonated soft drinks. So a very powerful tool. As I said, it can be used also to identify if you don't know where to innovate. In this first case, they knew what they wanted to innovate. In the second case, it's another client who was producing coffee capsules, but they wanted to expand their market because not everybody drank coffee, and not every market, in every country, the coffee consumption was very high. So they looked into other hot drink capsules, and then they looked into cold drink capsules, and then they looked into consumer segments such as babies, seniors, and athletes, and eventually into supplement additions. Now, as far as I know, the client has so far gone down this fourth level. They've launched a capsule system for babies, and I think they're in test market with seniors and athletes. So you can see that you can start with your current category and expand it to look at new opportunities and new ideas for new products that would be of interest to your customers, your consumers, your clients. So I hope that excites you. It does me, because this tool, zooming in and zooming out, are amazingly powerful, very simple to do. So I'm going to take a break now from sharing my screen and go back to the gallery view and open up to questions. I don't know if anybody put any questions into the chat. So we're going to move on now to people. As I said, people can be an issue with many organizations. And as we saw in the mistakes that even large companies make, there are challenges in four areas. The first area is that quite often organizations have an innovation team, and they sometimes even house them elsewhere in the organization, physically separated from the rest of the organization, supposedly so they're more creative, they're not limited by the way that the company is working or the current challenges. The second error they make is that they never share ideas with anybody outside the innovation team. So it's great for the innovation team, but it automatically excludes everybody else in the organization. So that means that people that may have a good idea, and we all have good ideas from time to time, there's no way for us to share it. And we all have, hopefully we are using the products and services of the company we work for, or we have friends and family that do. So we will all have ideas about how to improve our products and services. So it gets very frustrating for everybody that's not in the innovation team, because there's no way for them to share. And as a result, this can go even wider, and we don't let people outside the core business. So if you're in a company that has different categories, you can't even cross-fertilize across categories when you're working on innovation. And the last thing is that when the innovation team decides they're ready to move forward, they move forward. But if they're not in agreement, they don't come up with an idea. They have to be in agreement with the potential of the new product or service. So again, it limits the opportunities for people to give feedback. It prevents the company and marketing, sales, R&D from giving input and trying out these ideas with customers and consumers. Now, we already know that most organizations have a problem of silos. Most departments tend to work in silos, And as I said, quite often the innovation team is separate from those silos and quite often in a completely different part of the building, if not in a different building. I've been with a few clients that even housed them in a completely different building so that there was no cross-contamination, they told me. I mean, it was dreadful. A better way would be to move the innovation team into the heart of the business, and then that way it enables every other department to provide input. And that way, everybody is sharing ideas and it can go in both directions. The innovation team can talk to the other departments about what they're working on. The other departments can talk about what maybe they have seen on new opportunities. So it's a much richer and a much more creative environment to work in. One example of this comes from a client who had an R&D department, and they unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, their bonus was based upon the number of problems that they solved. So when consumers contacted customer services and said they had a problem, they were asked to send in the product so that R&D and operations could test it and see what was wrong. Now, because their bonus was based upon the number of problems they solved, they excluded from the total of problems any product where they did not get to test it. So they said, if we can't test the faulty product, how do we know it's faulty? And therefore, what happened in this client situation was they had R&D working on the number 3 problem. The problem that consumers contacted customer services about the most was that the powder, this was for infant formula, and they found the powder did not dissolve very well. But they came up with solutions such as whisking the product, and therefore they were able to eventually dissolve it. But they were frustrated, and therefore they called in to complain to customer services. But as they continued to use the product because they found a way around this problem, they never were willing to send the product in to be tested by R&D. And when I was discussing with R&D about the problems, because at the time I was also heading up customer services, and I learned the reason they were not working on how to make the product more easily dissolvable, I realized they were actually working not the number 1 problem, not the number 2, but the number 3 problem, because it was a problem of smell and taste, and therefore the consumers didn't want to use the product anymore and were happy to send it back in. So you can see that innovation can sometimes come from the customer directly, but we need to listen to them. And in this situation, the client did not. And I fought hard to change the way that the bonuses were based on the number of problems that they solved, not on the number of products that they received and then sold. So by including innovation within the organization and getting the input from all the other organizations, you have a much more creative process, you have a much more diverse source of understanding. And as I said, it was only when I was able to get R&D and customer services talking to each other that we identified that the number 1 problem for this client was not being addressed. So I'm going to stop there again and give you some chance to ask questions or comments, and see if you have this current situation where your innovation team is separated from the rest of the company, maybe even physically, not just within a group, And if you'd ever thought of bringing them back into have this day-to-day contact with the rest of the organization so there can be creativity coming from the rest of the departments into the innovation team and then back out again. Is that something that you do? Is it something that would appeal to you? Is it something that you would be willing to try and change within your own organization? I'd like to hear from you. So the final topic in innovation I want to talk about is the planning. And it's quite often the thing that people think about first, but as we saw, you need to be prepared. The world is changing faster than ever. So it's not just a matter of planning that going from the funnel to the virtuous circle that I talked about, but also planning for change, planning to be disrupted, planning to be challenged. Because if you don't plan for that, you could end up as the next Pan Am, Blockbusters, BlackBerry, Kodak, Borders, and all the other companies that have gone out of business in the last decade or so. Now, we already saw that the funnel approach is not the ideal way of staying relevant because you're always starting from internal ideation rather than from consumers. But there are other things you can do to future-proof your organization. You can look at individual levers that you have, and I'm just showing a few here, that instead of just brainstorming on the whole category as we were looking at earlier, you could look at innovating on packaging, on technology, on communications, on the channels you use. But there are so many ways to innovate. I think one of the things that I have noticed over the time is that most companies tend to go for pricing, communications, and branding. And then they might look at packaging and channels. But more and more now, we're seeing that customers are becoming sensitive to the way that products are sourced. Sustainability, ecology, climate change have all made people very sensitive. And then technology has also had a huge impact on not just IT, but on day-to-day living of our consumers. And therefore, we also have to understand how could technology impact our category or our business going forward. And as I said earlier on, innovation takes time. And even if we're working currently on developing a product to launch in the next year or two, coming up with ideas and concepts to be launched in 3 to 5 years, we also need to be looking at how our business is going to be changing 5 to 10 years from now. And we need to start preparing and planning for what the future holds. Now, it is difficult to predict, but you can still prepare your business, not by following trends, but by developing future scenarios. And that's a topic for a whole new masterclass I'll be doing later on this year. But it does enable you to go beyond the expected next development of your categories and plan for radical changes. Let me give you some examples. Telecoms used to be for communication. Most telecom companies today make more money by selling their geolocalization data than they actually do from selling communication services. The pharma industry have been forced, or they have seen the opportunity to move simply from treating illness to maintaining wellness. And obviously, there's a much bigger market in wellness than there is in illness. Food companies have also been challenging the pharma industry because they are moving into nutraceuticals. We all know that food is also medicine. and good food and bad food has a huge impact on our health. So by concentrating health benefits of certain foods, the food company is now challenging the pharma industry. The tobacco industry. The tobacco industry has reinvented itself as personal pleasure systems with their e-cigarettes. Their products now, they heat tobacco, they don't burn tobacco. Therefore, most, if not all, carcinogens are removed. They are claimed to be healthier, and in fact, Andrei Kalantzopoulos, at the time he was CEO of Philip Morris, many, many years ago, predicted a phase out of cigarettes. And that is what's happening today, at least in developing markets. And finally, alcohol. The alcohol industry is moving more and more to lower and non-alcoholic drinks, trying to keep up with this interest in wellness. And they clearly understood that whereas drinking is a social behavior, most people no longer include getting drunk with sociability. And therefore, what they are looking for is a way to relax with little or no alcohol, but still satisfying drinks. And just to bring the point home, I found this chart that I wanted to share with you from the music industry. And as you can see, over the years, it has gone from vinyl and 8-track to cassette recorders. If you're old enough, you might remember them, to CDs, MP3 players, and now streaming. Imagine if you were in the music industry, the number of changes that you've seen over a lifetime. If you stayed in a career, you probably started in the 70s and 80s in vinyl, and today you're in paid streaming. So companies that don't plan for changes will be forced to make changes or to go out of business, as the companies I mentioned earlier ended up doing. And we're getting evidence that companies are waking up to this. Google has gone from internet-related products and services to hardware such as the Pixel smartphones and Google Home, which is an Amazon Echo-like device. It's also expanded into a multitude of other industries through either partnerships or investments. And these include energy, augmented reality, virtual reality, eye tracking. It's clear that they intend to stay up to date, if not ahead, of the fast-moving technical trends and be ready to take advantage of them. And that's why they went from Google to Alphabet. Perhaps in a similar effort to prepare for the future, Google has also reorganized its various interests into the Alphabet name, but Google remains the umbrella company for Alphabet's internet interests. Facebook, they're doing something similar with CEO Mark Zuckerberg 1 year or 2 years ago revealed his 10-year vision centering around artificial intelligence, global connectivity, VR and AR again, and as you know, it's now called Meta. Virgin have gone from airlines and media and entertainment to travel to health and now into aerospace. Amazon from an online bookstore to general retail, and today is testing bricks and mortar stores, books, general groceries, and IT solutions. And Tesla started as an automotive industry and has gone super fast charging stations for their electric cars, but more recently they've moved into energy storage, residential solar panels, and they're advancing into underground high-speed transport as well as space travel. So being prepared and planning for change and planning for disruption is also a way to innovate successfully, especially when you're looking at this 5 to 10 year future trends that is so important for a business to stay healthy. I remember a client of mine, I presented some future scenarios to them. And one of the scenarios that I presented to them was that retailers demanded that all manufacturers become carbon neutral by 2025 or 2030. And I'm talking about, this was 20 years ago now, that I presented this scenario. And the CEO at the time said, poo-pooed it and said, Denise, that will never happen. Within 2 weeks, one of their major retailers contacted them and said that they were now demanding that all manufacturers be carbon neutral by 2030. As I said, this was almost 20 years ago now. As you can imagine, the CEO asked me to present again to the executive board and also the board of directors, because he realized that the company was not prepared. They didn't have the solution for becoming carbon neutral. So thinking ahead can prepare your company not only for new ideas of innovation, but more ideas for innovating ahead of the demands that might come. And I'm not saying you go ahead and actually start creating these innovations, but you plan for them. You think about the unthinkable and you prepare for plans that you could put into place much more quickly because you've already thought about those possible scenarios. So let's again take another quick break and hear any reactions to the idea of preparing innovation for the middle to long term of between 5 and 10 years, that quite often we never think about when we're innovating, because we tend to think about the shorter 2 years, 3 years, maybe up to 4 years. Okay, so we're getting towards the end. Let me just share the last couple of slides that I have with you, for you rather. And just to summarize what we've talked about is that if you want to be more successful in innovation, you need greater collaboration between the whole company, not just within the innovation group, but within the innovation group and with the other departments, and open out the ideas, the ideation, the concepts, the sharing of ideas, suggestions across the organization, and you will answer customers' needs far more quickly than just having the innovation team stuck away somewhere trying to be creative. If you work with the virtual circle that I talked about rather than the standard funnel process, you can optimize innovation as well, because the customer is involved at every step. And anyway, every opportunity starts with customer and insight development. And if you plan to be changed, be challenged, be disrupted, you're more likely to develop successful innovation and as a result have enhanced customer experience. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're looking to do, is to have customers that are not just satisfied but delighted. If you want to talk some more, I am free to contact. If you go onto the C3Centricity.com website and click on contact, you can book some time in my agenda. And I always promise that you're going to walk away from our chats with at least 3 ideas, whether that's how to optimize your culture, how to upgrade your process, how to work with future scenarios, or any other challenge that you might have in innovation. If you prefer to have one of those talks that we didn't cover today. There's so much on innovation. I hope I've chosen 3 areas that are thought-provoking and make you decide to make some changes in your own organization. And a last reminder, as I said, I do hope you will share when I send out the recording tomorrow, that you share it with anybody that's working in similar companies to your own or companies you know need help with their innovation, please share the recording with them so that they too can benefit from some of the ideas that I shared. So helping others innovate successfully, and we'll all get above that 5% rate that we currently have. So reminder again, book some time to talk to me. You can talk to me about anything, but if you have any innovation challenges, I'll promise you that you will end up with 3 actions that you find of value and that you can take. If you prefer to drop me an email, my email address is denisedd@c3centricity.com. It's also on my c3centricity.com website. And I'll open it back up now to any final comments that anybody has.